All right, Chris, this is your 43rd Super Bowl. What's Chris Berman's Super Bowl week like?
Am I that old? I don't. Okay, 43rd Super Bowl. Well, different than it used to be, Bryan, because the early days of ESPN and the middle days of ESPN, and even up to about 15 years ago, we would be doing 2 shows a day starting Sunday, the week before the game. And so you're on TV 18, 20 times. You go to all the media days, you interview all the players. That's how you do your pieces and the stuff. So they were long. Again, we're not in a coal mine. Let's keep that in mind. By the time the game came, you were on 20, 22 times. And then we do the morning show. Well, went into the afternoon. NFL game day turned into NFL countdown. And then we do NFL Primetime, which we still do. So those weeks, I can't compare to the 80s and 90s. Plus, I was young. I could do it. And in New Orleans, you better be young if you're going to get through it. 20 shows. And then, the last show is over at midnight. We might as well have a beer. And then the next thing you know, you're having one beer and it's 1:15. You know, I mean, and then the interviews are at 8:30 in the morning. Again, we could be digging ditches. So now it's different. I've got media stuff to do. I enjoy it. I'm close with a couple of teams. Every now and then I get invited to practice, and which is a thrill. And personally, I just do the primetime show at night on the field after the game. So I can't compare what I do now to then. As far as workload, the fans are the fans. They're great. They're football fans, but no but. Doesn't matter what city's in it. People at the Super Bowl know someone who's done football for a living. And so if you go thinking you're going to semi-hide, you're not. But it's okay. It's all respect for, if these people weren't out there, I wouldn't have had a job. So, but at the end of the 4 or 5 days, it's, you've taken all the pictures. Again, I'm not Taylor Swift. I'm not, mention a lot of other folks. But for football fans, I'm known. And I respect them. Who are you a fan of? And sometimes it's not the teams that are here. But I will say this. We've just sat down. I've just gotten here with you on a Wednesday. The Philadelphia fans on Bourbon Street for 5 days will be an interesting case study, okay? And I say that with respect.
Uh-huh. Yeah, great respect.
I'm not going to be studying it at 2 in the morning either.
You'll hear reports.
I'm going to be asleep. Oh, no, we'll hear reports. They'll be interesting. That's okay. They love their Fly Eagles Fly, and Bourbon Street sounds like a good place for Eagles fans. It'll be fun.
I read this amazing Chris Berman story. 1987 Super Bowl. It's Giants-Broncos in the Rose Bowl. You watch the game. You run out to the ESPN truck or whatever setup you have, and you're supposed to put your voice on some highlights of the game. And you want to pick up what happens from there?
Well, I hadn't thought of that in a while. I was doing that show the year before we started in full. The year before we had the NFL. So Allie Sherman, the longtime New York Giants coach, who's a friend of mine because his daughters went to Brown, and so we knew each other elsewhere, and we had done shows at NFL Films in the 80s. So he was the analyst. He coached Y.A. Tittle. He forgot more football than I'll ever know. And we got there, and then we realized there's no return feed, what we would call. Whoa. And we're about to go on like in 2 minutes. So we're working on it, but we're on in 2 minutes. Well, how am I going to do the highlights if I can't see them? I know what happened. America saw the game too. You don't need me to tell you that, Phil Sims did this and et cetera. And we're on. And the cameras worked. The on camera, we looked, hello, Chris Berman, Allie Sherman, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's roll the highlights, and then you're at the mercy. I'm doing it with no video return. But I paid attention to the game. I was young then, and I had a brain then. And so I got my ear with Sims to McConkey. O.J. Anderson, that was the next Super Bowl for the Giants. But, 29-yard run. And then lay out, and I figured, okay, until I heard something else that play was still going, and I remembered the play, and I did it. And somewhere at ESPN exists Ali Sherman looking at me. How is he doing this? Like how it's actually hilarious.
I mean, it's amazing. You're doing highlights without highlights.
As long as it didn't happen every day of my career, I was okay. It was the Super Bowl. I remembered the plays, but I hadn't thought of that in a long time. ESPN was still pretty primitive then, okay? Which is why we are where we are, at least us older folks who are veterans of the place. We were used to, the battery ran out. We don't have a battery here for this interview. Or the one tape we brought to interview 14 players ran out, like, duh. We were used to winging it. And that was winging it. I guess you could put that up there as something I did that was out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Let me take you back to prehistory. I did not know that your mother worked for Time Magazine. Is that what got you interested in the media business?
No, but it's a good question. I tell you what it did get me interested in now, because my folks were smart folks. Although they didn't do that. My mom was primarily a researcher for Time. She worked there for 30 years. I found her job. She was the researcher for what they would call, remember, Time Magazine at the time was, you had to get it.
It was the thing.
Right?
Yep.
Like Sports Illustrated, you had to get it. And even Life Magazine. So I grew up with these three things in my house at 6 years old. Life had the pictures, But she was called the back of the book researcher, which meant, I'm bringing myself back to, when I'm in junior high and high school, if the lead cover story was heart transplant, the medicine, they would have a 2-page medicine section or 1 or 2. That's what they do. Sport, by the way, not sports. It was sport. Time Magazine.
Singular.
Yeah, singular. Okay. So that researcher would do that, but then there would be another story on medicine in the back, and then she would be the medicine researcher for 1 week. Well, this is not Google. This is not anything. This is 60s, 70s, 50s, I think she was letter answering. But you had to look, she was the goalie. And if Time Magazine had facts wrong, heads rolled. And but she was different every week. Sometimes she would be sport. Muhammad Ali's on the cover. I'm making it up. Well, then they had some other article about some of them might have been a great pole vaulter again. I don't know. She would become an expert on that subject that week. And so what I learned, that was not to answer your question. I love sports, so I wanted to do this as a living if I was good enough, but I knew it was in my heart. But I learned from her, although she never gave me the speech, get your facts right. And we all make a mistake here and there, but get your facts right. She's looking up she's looking up medicine, and then the next week, cinema. I think that's probably, they didn't call them movies, it would be cinema or show or whatever, music. And then she's sport. I remember she called me at Brown once or twice. She was doing sport. It was stuff you couldn't look up. Do the Minnesota Vikings, Chris, have a very good defense? There's nothing you can look up there. Yes, Mom, they do. And so she went with, I felt I contributed to the magazine.
You became the de facto fact checker at Time.
Well, you can't check. They averaged giving up 8.2 points a game. You could look that up. Very good. We're going to look that up. And she did football. I mean, and stats weren't prevalent like now anyway. Uh-huh. So I felt I contributed a little bit. But I learned get your facts right. So that was, and then elections, they're presidential election years. Or even the midterms too, all the national, they would bring all of them in, and she would work pretty much for 4 straight days, and put the Time Magazine to bed. I was fascinated by her job. Not like I went in and saw her do it. I was pretty much still in grade school, and then junior high, and then high school, and then college. And then she had enough. But elections, they still kept calling her back. And I thought that was cool. Majored in American history, so I thought, election, that's pretty cool.
You started working at ESPN in 1979. You were 24 years old. What kind of anchor did you want to be in those days?
good, when to speak in complete sentences. By the way, not everybody does. I wanted to. That's a good question because at 24, I thought if I could get on TV somewhere by 25, I'd be ahead of the curve, whatever that meant, whatever that curve was in 1979. I wish I'd saved some of my hair. I looked like Ron Burgundy. I mean, we wore the jackets and the mustache. And I wanted to be someone who was able to tell a story of what I might have seen or read about, because back then, hardly any of the games were on TV. The Seattle Mariners playing the Kansas City Royals in 1979, 1980, 1981, you were reading a little wire story from the AP, and that's what you got. We didn't have, those games weren't on 7 days a week. You, the viewer, are relying on me, the sportscaster, to tell you what happened in the game in an interesting way, but get your facts right. Now, I'm more upbeat and, louder, if that's the right word, but into it, at least visually and verbally, than someone like Bob Lee, who, one of my best friends and ultimate respect. Bob would do it differently, but he was doing it like Bob Lee. I'm doing it like Chris Berman, not to be noted. I never did any stuff to be noted. I did it not to be noted. I did it to be accurate and excited about it because I figured, actually, I hadn't thought about the answer to this. Good question. We should do this for a living. I assumed I was talking to someone. When I look at a lens, I think of one person, nobody in particular, not male, female, white, black, old, young. How would I want that person to understand what I know? And I'm talking to me. Tell me in 30 seconds what happened in the Mariners-Royals game. Do it the best you can. It was really that simple. And we were doing sports for sports fans. It was not ratings. We don't have any of that stuff. We're cable. We hope cable TV even makes it. So I think that would be the answer, that I would like to be somebody would leave our show and felt, I got it. I read tomorrow's paper.
That's a good way to put it. I think it's 1985 that someone at ESPN says, "Hey, Berman, can you stop using the nicknames for the ball players?" Is that the first creative struggle of any note at ESPN?
I didn't have many, but that's a good question. You've done your homework. My mother would be very appreciative. Yeah, the guy who was running SportsCenter then was named Jack Galvan. Wasn't a bad guy, but I don't even know why he went this way. Early September, so baseball season's almost over. And it's becoming a thing, my nicknames, which again started by accident when I used to do the 2:30 in the morning show, and a couple of them came out, and we'd do it at college, and they came out, and people laughed, and I did some more. It wasn't, I'm going to get noted. They're going to know who I am. I'm the nickname guy. No. If you have a nickname, tell me you hit a 3-run homer. At any rate, he decided that nicknames it's not what we're about. Well, these things are movies, food, songs, sayings. Oh, to be McDowell. Oh, to be young again, McDowell. Hello. What's wrong with that? Like, Bert be home, Bly Levin. Like, every parent said it. Every kid heard it. Okay? Be home, Bly Levin. I get it. Well, we're not, whatever his reason, whatever. So, they were banned the last 3 weeks of the season. Now, if you were smart, you would have done it in the off season. Maybe nobody even knew they were gone in April. But they weren't smart. So, I can't get on the air as a 30-year-old and, earning salary. I wasn't any big star. I can't get on the air and make a ruckus. I'd be fired. So, all right, we had some funny ways of getting around it. If guys already had a nickname, meaning like Whitey Herzog, I called him Durrell Herzog for those 3 weeks, okay? Chili Davis, Charles Theodore Davis. They had no idea I was doing this. Mookie Wilson was William B. Wilson. Even Babe Ruth, like we were throwing to. We had, I don't know how we got it. John Goodman playing Babe Ruth, right? The Babe. It was following a show. I threw it to the George. These guys didn't know I was doing this. Like, okay. So, but again, George Brett helped save him. You probably read that story. But a friend of mine. We were in the age of the players, and it's back then. It was totally different than now. I called him to wish him good luck in the playoff. The Royals, that was the year they won the World Series, but they were in the playoffs again, and good luck. And he always loved the nicknames. Always loved it. He was annoyed the Royals didn't have more. I said, George, you're already George Brett. I'm not calling you Wonder Brett or, Sliced Brett. You're George Brett, Like,
he didn't need a nickname.
No, it was too late anyway. Like Johnny Bench was already Johnny Bench. You're not going there. It's a new guy. Okay, fine. So I said, George, by the way, just so you know, not to make trouble, I said, just so you know, I can't do the nicknames anymore. And he went ballistic on the phone. What? Fast forward to they're playing Toronto in the ALCS, no DS then. George Grand is interviewing him, one of the great human beings of all time. And George Brett is the Royals, especially later in his career. So this is the batting practice the day before the first game. And there's 50 people around, writers, some cameras and this. And George Brett comes out to do his thing. And George Grant goes, hey, George, how you doing? George, can we do? Yeah, of course. The guys, wait a minute, I'm going to do one here with George Grant. And he goes, but wait a minute, unbeknownst to me. Before we get started, what the hell is going on at ESPN that my man Chris Berman cannot do nicknames? And this was Rudy Martzke.
The late Rudy Martzke now.
The late Rudy Martzke, I know.
USA Today media columnist.
Yes, and unique. And I liked him. But he picked up on it. No one knew they were banned. It's not an announcement. And then it got picked up everywhere as a George Brett, goes off on or whatever. And then they played a game the next day, so nobody cared. Well, they did. We got more hate mail, I'm told, by our PR staff in 1985 than we ever got before. And then the bottom line was, April came in 86. Nicknames were back. He was gone. Again, I don't take any pleasure in somebody. I mean, that wasn't why. But there's a song about it. I fought the law, and the law won. Okay? I think Buddy Holly wrote that. I only found that out recently, but it was the Bobby Fuller 4. I get no pleasure out of it. It wasn't the point, and they became a thing. And I could call Whitey Herzog.
You call him that again.
Yeah.
It's an interesting crossroads moment for ESPN because you're not going to be network news necessarily. The house style, interpreted differently by different people, but can be different from something that people hear elsewhere on television. Fair?
Yeah. Because it's sports. There are some serious stories every now and then, obviously. I mean, like if we were this week, the plane crash with the figure skaters, not to mention those who aren't figure skaters, God rest their souls. But so you do those. I mean, you don't not do those, obviously, but most of it it's not. You're not there to be entertained in the way of, okay, give me a circus, but you're there to take your mind off whatever you were doing and you're a sports fan. So if we're doing sports, we're not trying to be the greatest of all time, Walter Cronkite doing the news, right? I mean, again, I'm dating myself, but or pick a more modern, anchor, pick Peter Jennings. I mean, not modern, but since Cronkite, we could go on. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to have you stay with us for half an hour while we do the show, and if you stay with us for half an hour, we must be doing a good job. They got a half an hour of news a night for the whole world. We had a half an hour of sports. Hell, well, this is fantasy. And so yeah, network. Yeah, no, we're ESPN. We're like even in the mid '80s, we were still your heroes, your little cult heroes. Or you didn't watch us. Cable. Some cities in '85 didn't get it yet. There were still political. I think Chicago was late. Like there was still political. Like really, cable in the mid '80s wasn't everywhere yet. It was more rural, and we became a grassroots, not cult. We became your personal station.
People had a relationship. They felt like they knew you.
Or me, or they knew us. Not so much me, us.
In a way they didn't know, like a network news division.
Correct, because, we're a little, we weren't the most polished. We got better every year. And again, it was sports. And a lot of it, the game just ended, and here's a highlight, and it ran backwards. Have some fun with it. Good luck with it. We started at the end, and we went to the beginning for 10 seconds before it ran the right. But believe me, I can give you a lot. Not like a whole highlight of the Super Bowl without a monitor, but you can imagine that in Sports Center, and we would just go with it. We were just normal, and the people kept looking for us. Something happened in sports, they knew we'd have it. It was a nice way to be. It really was.
NFL Primetime started in 1987. What was the original idea for Primetime?
I give Steve Bornstein, who was not our president yet, but became in the 90s for 10 years or 11 or 9 or whatever the number is. He was the head of programming, but way up. And so we got a deal. Pete Rozelle, one of the smartest gentlemen I've ever met, thought it would be okay if we brought ESPN, oh my God, it's not a broadcast network, into the fold. Now, what our deal was in 1987 to 89, I think probably a 3-year deal, was Sunday Night Football after the World Series was over, began about Halloween. And so 8 games. And if New York was playing New England, they would be on regular TV in New York and Boston in addition, so that if you lived there, you weren't. Because, people, what do you mean? This is not for everybody anymore. You can't get it. Well, yeah, you can. And in that deal, Steve Bornstein and Pete Rozelle, Steve Bornstein thought up an idea we would like to do a show, since only 3 games are on per market. If you're in New York, you never saw Seattle at Arizona, even if it was 45-42. It was the greatest game of all time. You didn't see it. We'd like to do a show for an hour with rights to do unlimited. We got to have a commercial in there every now and then, but we could do everything else highlight. Unlimited. Unheard of. And Pete Rozelle saw that was a great idea. And I wasn't there. So I don't know that this really happened, but I kind of know. And eventually, after Pete, it's part of the deal, small part of our big deal, put us on the map. ESPN was here to stay when we made that deal. And so he told Pete in kind of these words, because I was told later, this show, we're going to throw the ball. And I got the guy to throw it. And that was me. And so I wasn't the only one on that show. We did Tommy Jackson, just retired at 14 years. In that Super Bowl was his last game, by the way.
There you go, 87 Super Bowl.
See, everything is cyclical. And, or comes full circle. And we had Pete Axtell on it, the essay in the day, but it was the idea. I had nothing to do with it, but he thought that if they could get the rights for the show, I'd be the guy. And professionally, if the word important for sports is fair, I don't know that it really is. It was the most important show of my career and still is. The fact that I can still do it is why I still am working. It's fun. It's fun to do, fun to deliver, fun to hear about later on. So I thank Pete Rozelle and Steve Bornstein for that opportunity.
Most important show for you because it was the best canvas for you to work on?
As it turned out, yeah. I'm pretty good at highlights, I guess, and I do them like the game is live. If he's going to score a touchdown at the 25. If I'm just starting to crank up, he could go all the way. I don't say he's going all the way yet. I think a lot of people make mistakes doing that. Like, just let me see it. Don't assume I saw the game already. Still to this day, you can do it that way.
Wait a second. Stop right there. That's fascinating. So he could go all the way. You're preserving.
And he's not. All the way is about at the 5 of the goal line with nobody behind him.
In the viewer's mind that he might get tackled. You don't know what's going to happen.
I've done that before. Like, he could go. He's tackled at the 3. So
these are the small things.
Do it like it's live. Like same with if it's baseball, different. Obviously not in prime time. And he's going to hit a double off the wall. No, let it hit the wall first. And it's a double off the wall. Do it like it's live. It's not that hard. I mean, wait. Let him see words and pictures. 1 + 1 = 3. But at any rate, canvas, which is a really well way to phrase that, it turned out to be my best canvas. And I know something about football. I don't know football compared to coaches and GMs and quarterback. I mean, they forgot more football than I'll ever know, but I know enough, and I've been around long enough. And I had Tommy with me to put a player's perspective into words without going for 3 minutes on exactly how the 3-4 defense worked, which those Broncos were great at, I might add. And it was our directors and producers doing that show, which is actually interesting, going back to the guys who used to do live games, or maybe they would do it on a Wednesday. And this is the only studio show that reminds me of doing a live game. The games would end while we're on, and we were pretty primitive with some of the highlights, and they'd come flying in it was 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern, flying in at 8:15 with a piece of paper, and the tape would go in the tape room, and here's the 49ers are playing the Rams. I didn't see half of this stuff. I mean, the game is on, but you're not. And so the director's rolling it, and I hope the time, 3 minutes and 22 seconds, is correct. And I told the director in the early days of Jeff Wynn, in the early days of Primetime, Jeff, let's keep the puck in front of us, okay? And then, we had one segment that was off the rails, I remember. 2 tapes didn't roll, or I screwed up the wrong page. Or it could be anything. And we threw the commercial. Calmly in my ear, I think they got one by us, It was fun. It's still fun. It's still, that'd be on my professional tombstone. He did NFL Primetime. It was a good show. Still, and ratings changed. So all these ratings from another time will never be broken because now 8,000 channels, right? Back then, there weren't 2, but there weren't, maybe there were 100. So it's the highest rated sports studio show of all time on cable. That record will never be broken. The numbers would mean nothing to you. The early 2000s, we got on the live show in the 5s. Sunday Night Baseball, I don't think we get a 1. But again, I'm comparing apples and oranges now. And then the midnight re-air, which was 9 o'clock in San Francisco, got a 2.5. And the 3 a.m., December, weather bad, the 3 a.m. midnight West Coast would get a 1. So we got a combined 8-something on December 7th, And I kind of like that we set a record, It's not quite the record of, in sports, but it's a record, and cool.
I always think to come back to a studio show again and again, viewers have to like the highlights and like the analysis, but they also have to really like the relationship between the announcers. What was it about your relationship with Tom Jackson, do you think, that popped out on the screen?
That we were really good friends. And I had never met him when he played. You would think I would have, but
yeah,
I didn't. And very early on, because I have an answer early and then in retrospect, one I'll add to it, that he told me very early on, boom. I don't even know if I was boomer yet to him, but, I listened to the same music you listened to growing up, and you listen to the same music I did growing up. The fact that it was white, black, player, Ivy Leaguer, no bearing. That was real quick that it had no bearing. Tom, you love football. You're great at it. Still among the highest played games of Denver, like 190 something as a Bronco. I grew up watching Joe Namath in the AFL at Shea Stadium in the upper deck. Season tickets, so we went to all of them. Doesn't make me an expert, but I watched it and we connected. But here's how I knew I loved this guy. The first Sunday, September, whenever the season started in 1987, we're watching a game, and about a half hour in, somebody made a hard hit. And Tommy looked up and went, wow, look at that hit. I said, wait a minute, Tom. That's what you did. Like, you did that. I know, but that's just a great hit. I said, okay, this is going to work. I mean, this is before I even did the first show. We talk every week or two. We texted today, for example. We remain great friends. I know his kids. I went to his wedding with Jen. Kathy and I had already been married. He came over and read, a couple of nights, a dinosaur book to our kids when they were 4 or 5. He came to my wife's funeral. So we know we remain. We completed each other's sentences. But later on, I started with white, black, but I'll go back to it. Later on, I realized, not 30 years later, but why did we work? I never looked at it. Here's a white guy and a black guy. Here's a grew up in Cleveland, grew up in New England. None of that mattered. We were comfortable to everybody because we were great friends. And we had routines that he enjoyed being part of. Like Michael Jackson would catch a ball for the Cleveland Browns. And he'd catch Michael Jackson. I'd lay out and he'd go, hee, hee. That would be Tommy's thing. Or
one of my absolute favorite moments. Every time that happened, I smiled.
Well, and he would sing Lido Shuffle with me when Lido Shepherd would return a Lido. Whoa. Oh, Warren Moon. That was, still to this day, threw the prettiest pass, okay? The prettiest pass. And he would sing along. I would go, I'm being followed by Moon's shadow. And I'd lay out and he'd go, Moon shadow, Moon shadow. Like, this is football, but it's sports. It worked because we weren't trying to be. I think people knew that. We weren't, these guys are trying to be, the Tonight Show hosts. No. We're trying to do football. I happen to like music, so did he. I mean, we won one that actually you'll laugh at and I'll move on. Chris Fuamatu Mafala was a running back for Pittsburgh, a couple others. And I called him Bad Mafala, okay? But we had a really Shaft. We went to the Shaft song, and I forget how we did it because I haven't thought of this in a long time. And Chris Fuamatu Mafala, and then Tommy would go, shut your mouth. And I would go, but I'm talking about Mafala. And he'd go, can you dig it? Can you dig it? So, this was just stuff that worked. Look, not all of our paintings were Rembrandts, okay? Some of them were finger paints. But we sold them maybe for $2.95. They're not only... Yeah, at any rate.
Here's another moment. 1989, so 2 years after Primetime debuts.
Yeah.
NBC comes to you and says, Chris, leave cable. Come to the networks. Come to the what was then the big leagues of television. How would your career have been different if you said yes and gone to NBC?
I think about it every now and then. It's a great question. What happened was it turned out to be a big thing for our company, which was not the point of it. They pursued me. Dick Ebersol became, I could call him now, great friends. And they didn't, they had the NFL, obviously, but Bob Costas was hosting the show at that point. Bryan did it a couple of years, but at that point, and he wasn't going to do it that much longer, I was told, but I was doing it at our place. Admittedly, not at NBC. What else would I do? Well, we have the Olympics and this and that. And there's stuff. It's NBC. And I trusted Dick, and that was a correct reading because he's great and a visionary too. And they offered about times 4. Okay. At the time, I don't mind saying it, I was making pretty good money. Now, I've been 10 years in. Probably $160,000 a year. I mean, I'm not. By the way, I could live on it. 2 young kids. Less work if you really realize the network is just the weekend. Although you fly somewhere, you go, and then Tuesday you're not on TV. But that's part of what became part of the problem. You're not on TV. But it was times 4. So you can't not look at that. I wasn't in it to make the money. I never got in it to I can make a really good living. No. I can make a good enough living that if I do sports in Providence, Rhode Island, I'm fine. So I really was negotiating with Steve Bornstein, who at that point was number 2. What was he, president? 89? Roger Warner. Maybe Steve was president or number 2, but he would have handled that. Roger might have been still. And Steve, I went to Brown. I can add. What do you want me to do with this? And, they weren't ready to make that kind of, in every department, it was, if you have a big offer, you got to go take it. And you're not going to get times 4 staying here anytime soon. So eventually, this took about 5 or 6 months. And I said to him, he's not a golfer. I said, you got to get to within a 9 iron. I don't even know what that means. Like, it's not a number. And I said, I got one other thing to tell you. And I don't want to put myself as more, I really haven't answered your question yet, but I'm just giving you a background. So I want to tell you one other thing that you need to know. The whole company's watching this one. And I didn't think that wasn't to scare them. They were. Because you work with everyone. We knew everyone on camera. We knew everybody. They were still family. And he goes, I didn't think of it that way. And we figured it out within a couple they didn't match. They didn't have to. How would my life have been different? Certainly wouldn't be working there in 2025. That's no comment on NBC. That's just, it wouldn't be the way it would work. Would my bank account the next 10 years be better? I guess, although not 10 years, not the way things worked out. We became a different. I don't know if I'm beloved. That's not not for me to say. I don't think I would have the respect walking down the street here in New Orleans in 2025 that I would then. And I like that. It means a lot to me because people, whoever they are, when they see us earn it, I don't mean the money, earn it. There's respect there. Then you get to this, and of course, Don Henley was right. Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. And that's fine. I've taken plenty of my shots, although now it's kind of nice. I like this semi-retirement thing. But how would my life have been different? I don't think it would have been as real, but I wouldn't have been fake on TV. I don't know what I mean by that. But if you're on every day, they know you. And we got to cover every sport. If we don't have a Super Bowl. If I'm at NBC, we have it once every 3 years. You're not doing it the other 2 years. Well, we do it. And we cover the World Series. And we cover all these things. The Stanley Cup. I like all of them. I wouldn't necessarily be the only guy out there, but I'm doing a show and I'm also reporting on game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals in the NHL. I like that. Wouldn't be doing it there. You wouldn't be all sports. And I would have missed it. And the best move I ever made.
I've asked this to other TV people. When you're on the desk, waiting for the red light to go on, do you ever experience a kind of physical sensation?
Usually, I'm about the last one to get to the desk, okay? I wrote my term papers late at Brown. Nothing's changed. Real late. And I majored in history. Those are 40-page papers. You don't just slap one out, okay? So these are good questions. So I'm usually late. Well, not to the whole show, although I have stories that I could tell you, too, that I've started Primetime and looked into the camera, Tommy laughing, going, Tommy, people only knew. I didn't even have the mic hooked up yet. I'm holding it like this, et cetera. So he's losing it. But there's some days you're about a minute or 2 away. But there's always something going on. So I'm not like sitting there, okay, get ready to do network news. Like what? Most everyone's there a lot earlier than me. I'm different. So I made producers and directors get gray hair, but that's the way it goes. Again, I'm quoting music, but this is true. I think of it to this day. Some days you don't feel great. Be like a pitcher leaving the bullpen. I don't have my best stuff in here today. Might be sick. Kids might have been up at night. For whatever reason, this first story, I'm not quite. And I think of Jackson Brown. And I think of, because it ties into the red light, and stay in the loadout. When you see those lights and you hear the crowd, you remember why you came. You're on TV in 10 seconds. Somebody's expecting you to do a good job. They don't know you don't have it. Don't fake it. Maybe don't inflect as much tonight because I don't have a voice for whatever reason. I can still do it, but don't do my head. Maybe tonight, we throw a few more curveballs. Don't rely on the fastball. They're going to hit it out of the park tonight. But there are people out there. They're counting on you. They've tuned in at 7:30 for Primetime or Sports Center, whatever, expecting you to give me the sports. You owe it to them. So I don't have a seminal moment, but I think of that, okay, you're on. Like, let's go. Time to play ball. That's the little athlete. I didn't get past high school sports, so I don't know how good an athlete. But, we're competitors too, but that's not the right word. Just fun. Just give it to them the best you can, even if you don't have your fastball tonight. At the end of the show, they probably won't know that unless you really screw up, which I've done many times. And as I used to say before the world of you could record everything and it's on YouTube and this and that, if you screwed up, because all my analysts still, Steve Young, Harold Reynolds, the guys like from 20, 25 years ago, and then Tommy will say, they all ask me, what happens if we make a big mistake? It's on its way to Pluto. Don't worry about it.
No one will ever see this again.
It's ruling. It's refueling on Neptune right now. And if it was really bad, it's refueling on Uranus. So get over it.
Only those weirdos with VCRs will ever know that this happened.
And VCR, nobody's recording. Yeah. And it's not, did you see the stupid thing he said? It's gone. Just keep going. Keep talking. Talk about baseball. Talk about football. It's okay. You said it. It's okay. We all misspeak. Live TV. Have fun with it. Or keep going. But don't act, no. Have fun with it. It's okay.
Robin Roberts had a good line in 1993. She was doing Primetime with you in the other anchor chair.
Just saw Robin last week for the first time in a long time at a wedding. We such a good time. Just an aside.
She comes in and you looked a little off that day. Just something a little bit off. And she said, "Chris, what's wrong?" And your answer was, "It's the pressure of being me." This is 1993. So give me a sense. What kind of pressures are you feeling day to day at ESPN in that era?
Good. I'm glad we did this. Blame him. Because Robin, I think that's also about the time that I told her, I wish I was kind of where you are right now. I mean, we didn't know that she was going to become Robin Roberts and leave me in the dust, although that's not the point. Her first show ever was with me.
Didn't know that.
First Sports Center ever. I should answer the question, but here's an interesting one. I introduced her as, I said, not often you get to do a Sports Center with a Hall of Famer. Robin Roberts, the pitcher of the Philadelphia Phillies, in the Hall of Fame. I told this to her just this last week, and again, I hadn't seen her in years, personally. I said, Swami was right, wasn't he? You're a Hall of Famer. I was being funny. Here's a new person. Once again, I brought them all in. So pressure being me, I don't completely remember, but she and I would talk about fame some. I said, you're kind of on your way up. People know you're good. But you're not I guess I felt I was the quarterback. Now, there were many quarterbacks at our network, but I was the lead dog then. And there comes a pressure with it. I don't know what prompted me to say it that night. I wish I had the answer because I don't know. But I would say that not be funny tonight. I never worried about that. But, maybe you start to hear, I wish I had the specifics. This is a really good question. But maybe I don't have my fastball tonight, and tonight I'm not sure how I'm going to get the batters out. I mean, to go back to what we said, I don't mean to make everything a metaphor. I don't really mean to do that. But I didn't feel pressure of carrying the weight of the network. We're doing so many things. That was never my role anyway. I mean, I did what I did, but everybody else did what they did. Maybe 93. So maybe I had just signed. That was it. Steve and I signed 8 years in 93.
This is like one of the first big contracts, 93 to 2001.
The first one to the next century. We're proud of that. Because nobody signed more than 4 or 5 year deals. As a matter of fact, Bornstein and I annoyed him when we were, you have an agent that does the legal and he's great, but we did that one and not very long. We were, but I had 2 years left on the one from NBC, so that was 5 years. And he wanted to give me, so that took us to 95, wanted to give me 5 more years. So, he had 2 years left. Here's another 5. And I said, Steve, for 10 seconds, his face got, and I wouldn't mean to tweak him either. I said, Steve, we can do better than that. And he almost got out of his chair because this is money to ESPN. Again, compared to what any of them making now, I mean, I was the one that showed him it was okay. The network wouldn't go out of business if you paid somebody a little more than you really wanted to. And I'm kind of proud of that too. I mean, I laughed now. I said, listen, I was the one that went through the John Madden or Billy Martin through the light beer I was the one that I busted the thing open, but not really. In retrospect, those dollars aren't what it is now. And he got annoyed anyway. What do you mean? I said, because if we go one more year, it could be 2001, A Space Odyssey. And it's one of my favorite PR pictures. Derek will have to go back and find it. The press release, when it was announced, had like planets behind me. And we made the first no network news guy in 93 had signed to, or woman had signed to the next century. We were the first ones. We're kind of proud of that. I can still see Saturn behind me in this press release. We were still having a good time.
Yeah.
It wasn't everybody relax. We got Saturn in the press release.
That's something charmingly goofy about that.
Yes, I couldn't believe. Actually, I think Mike Soltis probably came up with that, Derek. And yeah, let's go with it. It wasn't Saturn, okay, and the moon. Okay, it was funny, right? You're laughing. You never knew that story.
Yeah,
it's funny. Steve sat down. He was fine after 10 seconds of rage. So I'm telling you, he was pissed.
It's a serious guy.
He remains a great friend. That's when in the 90s, Steve, I don't want to overstate what I was. I shouldn't. It sounds like I'm blowing smoke up my own derriere, which I'm not. But he was the Bartolo and I was his Montana. And we took that seriously. But maybe at times in 93, I was, I don't know if I'm going to complete the passes today. And so, sure, Robin helped me get through the show because she was a future Hall of Famer.
I want to ask you about how ESPN's changed too, because you talk about the 80s, the cult heroes era, but your cool friends know about this, but not everybody knows about this. Then ESPN gets really big. And it's a Gatorade flavor, and it's a sports bar, and it's everything else. And so it's this big monolith of an ESPN. You think there's a third era of ESPN after that? Did it change in your eyes?
Well, part of it was because in 89 we had plenty of employees. And in 95 we had plenty of employees. But it would have been impossible for any place, because they wouldn't have started like this. We all saw each other get married and kids and have tragedies, and saw each other earn it. And even in the 2000s. So it would have been impossible. This is not a commentary on, where did we go, quote, wrong? We didn't go wrong. Impossible. There are departments and this and that I used to know almost everybody. Of course, that's going way back. Of course, I used to be there every day. But it would have been impossible to stay the same. It's not a Disney comment because, my God, they've given us so much more than probably we ever. I mean, when Michael Eisner, said this is one of the biggest reasons we're buying ABCs because we get ESPN. I mean, that's going way back. So as everything escalated money-wise, now I'm getting out of the family and the togetherness, because there's no way I would know the people working in New York, the people that are working in Brazil, the people so life has become less personal, right? I mean, Zoom, this, that, and then I might knock Zoom, email, this, that, writing a letter. Life's less personal. So part of it was just going along with this is the way it is, but we didn't have in-person meeting, this and that. So you didn't know the people who were your fellow maybe working twice as hard as we were in the programming department, in the sales department, certainly the technical department. We can go in the PR department. We can go on and on and on. So the third phase would be life in the TV business changed. It wasn't, Disney. Yeah, now they, we're much more corporate than when they first had us for 10, 12 years. I wouldn't be the one really to answer that anyway. I'm glad I never. When George Bodenheimer was president, who remains one of the great human beings and remains a great friend, obviously. He never said it, and I don't think we've ever discussed it. He made sure whatever corporate, not battles, but things he had to balance as a major asset of the Walt Disney Company, he was able, while he was there, we didn't know about it, really. It's not for us to tell you how to run our business. This is not, it's not the way it works. But nor would I want to. I would never want to sign somebody's check. It's your job, George. So I think, Bryan, he kept it so we could still be kind of us, even though he was I don't want to say he's fighting battles. It's not for me to say. But the core business was changing. But I don't know how much longer anybody could have held that off, at least to us. So the last 15, 20 years, I think it's an evolution that was mostly inevitable, like by society, mostly inevitable by business, mostly inevitable, broadcast rights you're paying, to this, that, skyrocketed. So who are we to say, well, we're not ma and pa anymore? Well, no, we can't be, or else we won't be successful. But I feel for the young ones, 20s, 30s, 40s, that didn't have the same experience we did, although they're making more money than we did, I guess. I mean, I'm not talking about on air. I mean, I guess. That's not about it. They're still getting married, having kids. They're hopeful and hoping to, move forward in their job and maybe stay here and maybe go somewhere else. I still smile every time I drive there. I really do. Then again, I have lots of memories, although I don't every day drive in going down memory lane. So the third phase of ESPN, it was inevitable, most of it. And I think we've had leaders that have bent the river as well as they could to keep what we've had. But I think in the end, it would have been impossible. What would I have done differently? Hell, I wouldn't want that job. So I like my job.
I got some quick lightning round questions here for you before we go. If it's okay.
This is fun. You know what? You got me. I haven't even washed my face yet. So it's like I'm a little verbose. So you're going to have a hell of an editing job.
Oh, my gosh.
Hopefully you're enjoying. You're learning something here, aren't you?
Favorite analyst to work with at ESPN?
Well, Tom Jackson.
Easy one.
Oh, God, yes.
Favorite anchor to host with at ESPN?
Tom Mees and John Saunders. Both, unfortunately, have passed away.
True or false, the San Francisco 49ers once gave you a Super Bowl ring.
True.
You ever wear it?
No.
Was it in a box? Where is it?
I got it in a box.
You ever look at it?
Once every couple of years. Eddie DeBartolo and I were very friendly. The reason I got that ring from him, Eddie gave rings to a lot of his friends, I guess. They were 6-5 in '88, not the '84 season that went 15-1, not the '89 season that went 14-2, and that killed Denver here in New Orleans in the Super Bowl, 55-10. And for whatever reason, went out to Youngstown and interviewed him in his office about stuff, league stuff, Niner stuff. They were 6-5. Said, Eddie, you're going to win the Super Bowl. Get out of here. I said, no, you're going to win the Super Bowl. Nobody's great this year. I can see it. No, come on. I don't think they lost again. They might have lost one. They won the Super Bowl. That was the Montana to Taylor at the end. 5 months later, I got a call from his office, and Mr. DeBartolo has a question for you. Yeah, but does he need me on the phone? No. What's your ring size? For what? He wants to give you a present. Oh, okay. I don't know. I know what it was when I got married. I've put on a few since then, since 1983. Oh. I mean, so that's the genesis. I mean, it's really a friendship.
Which the Swami correctly predicted that the 49ers would win the Super Bowl.
At 6-5.
Hence, the Swami got a ring when they did, in fact, win the Super Bowl.
Well, I convinced the owner, and he said, you're wrong. Okay, Eddie. And then I was right.
You mentioned you were a history major.
Yep.
If you hadn't become a sportscaster, what job would you have done?
I don't think teaching history. Well, the funny answer is, which I've given a couple times before, the funny answer is to drive but own the beverage cart concession at Pebble Beach. I mean, I own it too. So it's not just, okay, you're making minimum wage and maybe they tip me. Right. I'm not a good-looking woman, so I may not get the tip that they would making a Bloody Mary, but I've that's been in print, a couple of golf things. So seriously, that's a great question because My dad once asked me, just in case, do you want to go to, only once, never pushed. Great guy. You want to go to business school just in case this sportscasting thing doesn't work? No, I want to take it to see. I want to see if it doesn't, I'll figure something else out. And he'll be great at it then. So I don't know because I followed. I'm one of 15% of the people that does what they love, or in the field that they love. I'd like to think there's more, but probably not in the field that they love. The individual job may not be exactly what you want. So I don't know. This is good. I mean, I'm going to have to start thinking about this stuff if I make it to 50 years here. Jesus, I'm going to have answers for these.
All right, I got a last one for you. In your final broadcast, whenever that may be, what are the last words you want to say on television?
I'd like to think I'd have something pithy, but it would be more serious than that. It's another song or something. Those that have seen me maybe for, let's say it's 50 years, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to make that, but it's not a goal. But now all of a sudden it's down the street. Been here 45. Ooh, I never thought about 50. So I'd like to thank all the people that allowed me in their homes. Whether it's over 50 years or 45 years, let's say it's tomorrow, or just this week. Because it was a privilege to sit with you in your home and talk sports with you. Hope you understand that's the way I have approached it. And without you, I wouldn't have had a job. So we probably wouldn't have had a network. So I assume my last broadcast will be at ESPN. At this point, it's a good bet. So whenever that is, I don't know when that's going to be. I mean, I'm not doing this forever. I'm not holding on to. I still like doing it. I think people like me doing it. If they don't, I'll hear about it, or they'll hear about it. That's a good question. The only aside, lightning round, I break all the rules. Ask my producers, oh my God, he's got to do this in 1 minute. It'll never happen. So my first job was a disc jockey in Westerly, Rhode Island. Among other things, small radio. I think I earned $125 a week. As a matter of fact, that is exactly what I earned. I couldn't tell you what I make now, but I believe me, it's not a number that you think. I mean, I'm semi-retired. They underpaid me for 20 years. They overpaid me for 20 years, and now we're kind of in the middle. So I signed off in Westerly, Rhode Island, WERI, Westerly, Rhode Island, little beach town. I played the last, I said, it's been great. You people have welcomed me, or something like that. And I played 2 songs. Played Rocket Man. And I played Take It to the Limit one more time. I don't know that many people would know those. Well, you know them, but I wouldn't quote them now. But that's what I did in 1978, June-ish, to get a big job at radio in Waterbury, Connecticut, $150 a week, but not working 60 hours, working 45. Ooh. So I played those 2 songs. I let that speak for myself. But I would say what I've said, and that just, I'm grateful that you let me in your home. Not sure why you did. But you opened the door, not me. So I would think of something to lighten it, not be so heavy and tear up like you asked me that question.
Chris Berman, thanks for coming on the Press Box.
This is, I got to start listening to this, my man. This is good. Thank you for doing your homework, Ryan. That was really, went down roads I hadn't thought of in a long time. Usually it's like wrapping up a career interview, but no, it's apropos, 45 years. This is fun. Hope your listeners and viewers get a little kick out of it. And thanks for being so prepared. My mother would have been proud of you.